Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZGrips, MAF Corporation, for Patriot Foods, and Primary Arms. The show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew LaRosiere, and I'm joined by Mr. Ivan. And what are you doing?
I'm trapezing about in the woods.
Just having yourself a little...
Yeah, I have my little gun.
Just having a little trapeze.
That's true.
That's nice. That's a nice looking Drake.
That's a really good Drake. It's the best. In fact, it is among the best of all time for a particular reason.
A particular reason, which we'll learn later. But oh, yeah. So how's things been?
Things have been good. Busy as usual. I've been making guns.
Yes, and I've seen some good tests, some good results that have come about, some exciting things that should be
Indeed.
On the horizontal.
Indeed.
The horizontal.
You know, speaking of guns, I think I see something there on the wall behind you that looks like a really bad gun.
All right, hold on. A really bad gun? What do we got? Oh, the P320?
It is a bad gun, but no, somehow even worse.
Even worse. Oh, the CZ75, the pre-B right there?
Now, just because Reddit likes it doesn't mean it's worse than the 320.
Oh, okay. The Nambu.
No. Even worse.
Oh. This?
Yeah.
The Scar 17S?
Yeah.
Oh, that old
toilet
thing.
Paper gun.
The toilet paper gun. Yeah, that's a really bad gun.
That's true.
I don't know how anyone would buy one of those on purpose. I sure didn't. It was a mistake. It's a bad gun. It's
I asked them for a good 308 and they got confused and gave me a worse one.
Yeah, it's like, can I have a good 308? A expensive 308. No?
A good one.
A good one. Yeah, no, it's dreadful. Did you know that?
Yes, I've shot one. I was so amazingly unimpressed, and then everybody's like, "Oh no, it's actually good." And I sit there thinking, like, being an aluminum receiver, you'd think it'd be lighter, and it's not. And being a modern 308 with an inline recoil system, you'd think it wouldn't. You think it wouldn't be as awful to shoot, and then it's like I put it on the same par as the M14, where it's like, right. It's not, doesn't feel very controllable. I just hate it. I do not think it's good.
And the UGVU stock is awful.
Yeah, it looks great, and then it's the Call of Duty gun, but then you actually use it, and it's not that great. I
think it's hideous, actually. And the very first thing I did when I took ownership of the gun, I got it on a trade. I took the charging handle was on the left-hand side, like stupid NATO idiots like to do. And I literally, the moment the gun was mine, I took it apart and switched the charging handle to the right-hand side.
And then put it as far back as you can, so it's like an AK.
Yeah, I was like, now it's at least usable. But the other thing that, you'd think that with a AR-derived trigger group, which it's kind of not, it's really an FNC trigger group, right? But it's closer. But anyway, you'd think it would be a really clean, crisp trigger.
No. It's very military triggery. It's just not.
It is certainly the stablemate of the P320. They feel like they were made to live together.
They're made to be shit together.
Yeah, and I will say the Scar, the Scar L, which I guess is the Scar 16 for whatever reason. That thing is shockingly heavy when you pick it up. It might just be because I was too used to FALs and G3s, but I was kind of surprised with how light the Scar Heavy was.
Right.
Just for what it is. But then again, you pick up an AR-10 and you're like, oh. And I mean an original military configuration AR-10, not this garbage
Super Bowl barrel with the extra heavy quad rails and 2.5 pounds of optics on it. And...
Yeah, but I was I was a little surprised with how light it was, but unquestionably, indubitably, bad gun. Yeah, if this is one of your grail guns, you can maybe find it in my dumpster later.
It's another one on the guns on the long list of guns that people buy because it's from Call of Duty, and then they'll build their whole identity around it and defend it for being a good gun, but it's a bad gun, just like the P90.
just like the P90, which is the other gun that I was almost traded for. But I wound up taking this one, and we
got
talked
the
about
shiniest of two turds.
Yeah, no, we talked about. I talked to you, and I was like, "Which one of these stupid guns do I take?" And you're like, "Well, the P90 is a bad gun all around. Like
It's bad gun. It's a bad gun, and it's stupid.
it's a bad gun and a bad idea. But the Scar,
the 308 with an aluminum extruded upper is not stupid. It's kind of cool, really. The Scar is just bad. It did it bad. But
The Scar is a bad implementation of a reasonable request, and of course, that reasonable request that led to the Scar was the need to modernize the Shosha. Because that's exactly what the Scar H is it not? 20 round mag. It is the modern Shosha. And I see you're all geared up. But I see one issue. I guess you didn't get your Comtex, did you?
I didn't get. They haven't canceled my order yet. I'm still waiting on my $100 Comtex. They'll show up. I have faith.
I haven't canceled that either.
Trust.
And for those of you guys who don't know, this week that was a fascinating little thing that happened. Fisher Scientific is like, some major supplier of bullshit. It's a bunch of
laboratory supplies and safety equipment, and they usually deal with industry level players and or government.
Yeah.
I mean, they sell everything from rocket fuel to containers of human piss for experimentation.
They actually do, yeah. So it's that type of place, the type of place you'd never usually shop. But somebody found that they had listed Comtax,
Comtax SWAT 5s, like the newest, the greatest of the great. These are usually $1,000 plus.
Yeah, the DevGru headset. And they were like, it was obvious that they had missed a zero when they put the sale price.
Yeah.
And it was listed as 92% off. And we both tried to order them, and so did the entire internet.
And then some people were ordering like 10 cases of them, and then calling the customer support and asking when their order would ship out, and like making their customer service aware of the issue. And so then they started canceling orders. Like, okay, idiots. Just like don't. All you have to do is don't call them, and then see how many can slip past before they recognize, like, hey.
I almost wonder whether that whole thing was just an elaborate ruse to get like ordinary people to shop there.
To get ordinary people to buy piss.
Well, and some people were like, oh, they actually have really good deals on PPE. And like, I'm sure they got a lot of actual business from that. They
did have very cheap safety glasses. I bought safety glasses from them as well, because they were selling them. They're selling them for like 2 cents per safety glasses. I know I saw another guy who bought like I guess he didn't understand that like it was 12 packs and each pack was a dozen. And so he ended up buying 5 cases, each having 144 safety glasses in them. And he bought them for like 1/10 of a cent per safety glass. For nothing. And now he's got, I don't know, 700-800 pairs of safety glasses.
He's set. They showed up?
Yeah, he got them.
That's so good.
It's exceptional.
Are they good?
They usually are like $10 each safety glasses, and they're made in the US, and they're like anti-scratch and anti-fog. I'm gonna see, because I got similar ones. I wanted the clear lenses. I think they got the smoked lenses, but
smoked. Oh, that's hilarious. And I saw they had a really great deal on a beekeeper's hood.
So their gas masks were all like a not full face shield or sold out, but they did have super cheap deals on just like dust masks, which was kind of interesting. Anyway, this episode of This Week in Guns brought to you by Fisher Scientific. Fisher Scientific. Whenever you need jars of human semen or piss, they've got it.
They do. It's in stock.
It's lab quality piss.
It's tested. Comes with the material safety data sheet and everything.
Don't drink unless.
Don't drink unless the following conditions are met. But yeah, so the first story here is actually it was an interesting analysis on the reload, and it follows a few cases where injunctions were denied, or even lost at summary judgment on a question of whether laws, because as we know, under Bruin being that, I'm trying to make my presentation more friendly to like anyone walking off the street. So
Right.
sorry guys if it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but as we know, Bruin was that major U.S. Supreme Court case that clarified what the standard is in evaluating a gun control law. And an important part of that test is, where you have a law that affects the right to arms, were there historical analogs to it that would basically justify it as being part of the nation's a deeply rooted history of regulation. And so the question there's one open question that the Supreme Court didn't straight up tie there. Well, there's a lot of open questions, frankly, but that's where do you look? Is that at the time of the founding in 1791 or at the time of the ratification of the 14th Amendment, which is the first time the Constitution was applicable against the states? And it might shock you who is arguing for 1791 and who is arguing for 1868.
Yeah,
the anti-gun side very badly wants the relevant frame of analysis to be 1868 because there were gun laws in 1868. It just so happens that they all come from, virtually all of them come from the familiar suspects of Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And
there's a particular stripe of individuals that they weren't fond of having any rights, let alone gun rights.
Yeah, particular, I'd say, they say birds of a feather and something about the colors of the feather or the feathers being colored.
Colored feathers.
Yeah. No birds of paradise. And so then it's so fascinating watching all of these progressive governments argue forcefully for the relevance of Jim Crow laws, like actual, and I'm not being hyperbolic, actual straight Jim Crow laws in justifying their modern gun control. So yeah, like the big problem here is Thomas wrote the opinion in Bruin, and when he addressed this, the question of whether it should be 1791 or 1868, and he said there probably isn't too much of a difference, and that's because part of the analysis is supposed to be why and how,
right,
those regulations, those historical regulations went forth. Well, what happened in New York and what's happening now in Maryland and in a few other cases, some of which, I'm involved in, the courts have like complete sophistry made up that, oh no, if it's similar enough, we can ignore why and how, which seems insane, right? Like they're saying, if we think the law is similar, we don't have to analyze whether or not it only ever applied to, disarming one race of people, even if it's in the record.
Right. Like they'll look at a law that says that, Catholics can't carry guns or whatever. And then in modern day, they'll say that, that's applicable to everyone not being able to carry guns. But Bruin would tell you, check the how and the why. The how was specifically only Catholics and specifically only carrying guns, and specifically only sometimes with some of these laws in certain places.
Right.
And then the why was because they wanted to discriminate against Catholics. That's not exactly, at least as far as the justification they've given for the modern, carry bans. It's not because they want to discriminate against Catholics. At least they haven't said so. And the way that they go about doing it is completely different, right? Because they're not just restricting the people they think are dangerous or what have you.
They're restricting everybody.
Right.
Yeah. And so the reason the gun control crowd is violently defending 1868 enactments, I don't think as it's because they really like Jim Crow. I think it's because that's the only way they can possibly win.
Yep. The only way they can win is by embracing some sort of racist or prejudicial past, and hope that you can get enough progressive judges to go, yes, because people were racist, then we can discriminate against everyone now.
Right. So this degree of irony, I hope, is not lost on y'all, dear listeners. The issue, though, is that it's working.
Right.
It has worked in New York, Maryland, and even the Holy Floridian Empire, where the 18 to 21 ban, literally the 11th Circuit panel wrote that it thinks Civil War era laws are even more probative of the Second Amendment's understanding than founding era laws, despite the Second Amendment only having been written once.
Right.
And it was because that was the only way they could uphold a ban on legal adults from being able to acquire firearms.
Yep. Like the only legal vehicle they have is like the only card they have to play is remember that time that we said that Native Americans are all savages that like to murder people in their sleep?
And the wild thing is, let's talk about specifically New York, because the synagogue carry ban, they basically made it so you can't carry a gun in place of worship, which hilariously, of course, mass casualty shootings are very rare. Hilariously, though, where they do happen, places of worship are not unpopular targets. So, and then they often get stopped by church security, which is like a thing.
Right.
It's a thing that I have been at one of my churches, and it's important, and it makes the congregation feel much safer, and it's just generally a positive thing. Well, no, New York wanted to just straight ban that. So the government presented post-Civil War, like decades after Civil War laws, and this is the New York government citing Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi laws. And the plaintiffs, right, the pro-gun side, had laws showing all the way back to the colonial era, right, and persisting up through the founding era, laws actually encouraging people to carry firearms, and some where you actually had to carry firearms to any public assembly to guard against potential attack. The judge in New York said, I'm discounting these laws entirely because the onus of these laws was a prejudicial fear of Indian attacks and slave uprisings. And while the Indian attacks were actually
right, that's
the real
that's
concern,
what they were going for.
Well, no, because they in the historical record, they said it was because of Indian and bear attacks.
There you go.
So, I mean, one of those is definitely not a racial animus, right? It's a specious animus, but that's the degree of disingenuity, right? They're saying we're ignoring that because of the why and how, and we're going to ignore the why and how here,
right?
Because we like it. So this is a really important thing, and it's in like where the various circuits land on this is going to be the deciding factor in whether we can actually have gun rights respected in this country through the courts. Because if it's a post-Civil War approach, and by the way, a lot of the laws that New York and Maryland and stuff like that cite and rely on aren't even around 1868. They're like 1890s and 1880s, and the judges are just, feed me more. Like some of the one 1914 law was cited with approval. Like,
of course, even if you look at the assault weapons ban in the Seventh Circuit with Illinois, they wouldn't stop talking about the NFA. It doesn't matter. The NFA is completely outside of the scope of what's acceptable. You can't look at the NFA as an analog. You can't look at it as but these dangerous guns are banned. You can't look at why that. It's irrelevant. Right.
And it's because all of the pro-gun lawyers, except for like 3 of us, will just do anything to snap their spine to see that the NFA is a wonderful, sacred cow that cannot ever be touched.
Oh yes, short-barreled shotguns are the dangerous weapon of criminals, and they're for mass casualty because you can't aim them.
It's a sorry state, boys. It's a sorry state of affairs, but don't worry, we'll fix it.
We will have to.
I guess who else is gonna fucking do it? I mean, we'll sure as hell try, and you all should be trying too. So yeah, so that was just wanted to start up on a really upbeat note. And next up, we're staying upbeat. There was an attempted notable Las Vegas and Philadelphia that didn't quite happen, and there's a lot of interesting factors about this one.
This is another one of those where it's like reality is stranger than parody.
Yeah, that's what and also for those of you guys who don't know, you can find all these stories we talk about and all the up-to-date stories curated on Pew Report. That's PEW.report. And when I was writing my take on this for the newsletter, I had to get a little... I'll just read it. The writers of this simulation must have unionized because this most recent notable Las Vegas, which happened in Philadelphia, is entirely out of control. Kimberly Carricker, which the police described as a 40-year-old male, but the internet hotly debates the gender of, killed 5 people and wounded 4 with an AR pattern and a Glock clone of some sort. His motive, naturally, was an attempt to help authorities address the city's gun violence crisis, and following up, that a deity would be sending more people to help shortly. So that happened.
That's a thing. That's a whole thing.
This individual killed 5 people. And, if you were Philadelphia, how would you respond to that?
Well, if I was Philadelphia or if I was using my brain?
No, if you're Philadelphia.
Oh, well, I would find somebody else completely unrelated to the tragedy, and I'd blame them. I'd find some way to make somebody else responsible. Yes,
that's what you do. So the Gifford's in Philadelphia teamed up literally like within 48 hours to sue JSD Supply and Polymer 80 because
yeah, that they gave them the orders. I'm sure they orchestrated.
They definitely
the shooting.
did.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
they're responsible.
Now, look, I think that this is a completely normal thing for a city government to do. That being pretty much precisely what a terrorist tells you to do.
Yeah,
this is a regular in governmental behavior, and perhaps the deity that was communicating with Carricker, which some people suggest may have been the FBI, actually sent the city of Philadelphia and Giffords to help with the mission.
There you go.
And this would fit with the divine plan as it is written.
All you have to do to get more gun control is kill people. You got that? You got that, gun control zealots? I'm speaking directly to you.
Dude, like, it's one of those things where, it's a somber and horrible thing that happened. But, like, as I'm talking about it, I can't not laugh. It's just so shark-jumpingly stupid.
It is... and of course, the gun controllers would never think that this is like making a mockery of the people who died, like to go and sue the company instead of it's just stupid.
Yeah, and and also, let's be fair, not necessarily saying that this was a direct response, but the fact that it was announced,
the timing's impossible. The timing's impossible.
Yeah, but it is distasteful. It is very distasteful that they would announce that suit immediately afterward, because that does send the message. It does appear that you're doing what they said.
Right.
But no, like you said, the timing is impossible. They were certainly planning this, and it is most likely a result of the framer receiver ruling coming down. and them wanting to relitigate that on a municipal level
over a nuisance law.
It was a nuisance. Yeah, this because that's the way they've been trying to get around the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. They pass a law that says it is a nuisance to sell this product,
right?
Which is of course ignoring
it's
the definition
insane.
of nuisance.
And oh man, this one of these cases really needs to get to, like, if not the Supreme Court, some level of higher court that has a brain. And cases like this really need to get smacked down because it's completely nonsensical.
I got California, this from Fisher Scientific.
the way that California and New York and these other states are, they sue gun parts companies because in some cases, like, they don't have any evidence that these gun parts companies sold parts into the state, but then the state itself will have its own investigators just buy parts from the site, and they're like, oh, well, we could have used these. So anybody could have bought these parts, and they could have built a gun.
And sometimes they'll just allege that, well, it was reasonably foreseeable that these would have wound up in the state. And so it's like, so what's the distinction between the Attorney General of New York and the Attorney General, if that's all you have to do?
Right.
I should be able to violate, like, I go out into the street every day and do and say things that would get me arrested in Germany.
That's true.
Maybe not every day, but a lot of times, right? Or the United Arab Emirates or somewhere, right, like that. And why should I care? What's illegal over there? Why should I ever care? That's one of the reasons that we have a dual sovereign. But now it just doesn't matter because it's been on that downward trend ever since. I mean, where was I'd say the high water mark, except it hasn't gone down from the high water mark. It's only gone up with South Dakota v. Wayfair, where they're just like, oh, yeah, no, you can force other people to collect your sales tax, even if they've never been anywhere near your state.
Yep.
It's not going to work. We cannot have the 51 or 53, depending on how you look at it, federal governments.
Right. The funny thing about this, and it sort of ties back into the merchant category code thing, where there's states now requiring that you can't do it, and then there's states requiring that you have to do it, and the credit card companies will have to pick a side eventually, where these state governments have decided, found their own little ways to make themselves federal governments. And the only thing the federal government was originally intended to do was stop this exact thing from happening. Their one purpose was to stop the state governments from doing the exact thing that they're doing right now all across the country.
It's like, why didn't we just stick with the Articles of Confederation?
At this point, we'd be better off because the federal government refuses to do their job.
Yeah, no, it's because they were annoyed when they were like, can you send us soldiers? No. Please? No. You deal with it.
The federal government should be a much funnier
country.
If not through legislation, through sanctions on the states doing this stuff. It's like, hey, stupid! You can't make conduct that occurs in another state that has never touched your state illegal. You can't do that.
But they do it. They do it.
But they do it. They get away with it, and they've been getting away with it for some time.
I met a guy, a really cool guy, who I'm not going to, because there's some degree of attorney-client relationship, but when he showed up to my office to talk to me about his case, he had a stack of orders, against him from other states. And he walks into my office and he goes, "Oh, you see these?" I go, "Yeah, I'm familiar." And he throws them in the garbage. He's like, "I just want to set the tone of our meeting." And I was like, "I understand your position." I thought that was so cool. I don't know, with my career, I'd have to take a different approach, but I do think that it is so cool because at a certain extent, what are you going to do?
How long before? I mean, the merchant category code thing is probably the most aggressive, most likely to end in this way. But how long?
Well, because you're necessarily dealing with large entities that have to handle it.
Like how long until the country is like effectively balkanized? Like your money, like your Florida money, can't be spent in California because your Florida bucks could buy a gun. Like, how long before California is like, the US dollar is itself a public nuisance because you can buy guns with the US dollar?
Right.
We've now invented the California dollar, and it cannot be spent on things such as guns. Only on drugs, so you can freebase in the streets. That's the important part.
Yeah, you can, and using the I don't want to say, the S word that YouTube doesn't like us to say, of, terminating your existence, the booths. You can use California money on drugs and the S word booths. And the goodbye booths.
Freedom to shoot up in the streets. In Florida, you're free to shoot up the streets. In California, you're free to shoot up in the streets. You have to pick one.
One and not both. God, what an awful zone.
Yeah.
This is...
It'll only get worse until the federal government does their job. Like, oh my God, the worst thing about this whole thing, the federal government has one job. They have one job, and it's to stop the states from doing the exact thing that they're doing. Because
now they've got more. And one thing that I loved, I was at during my time in DC, I was at the some fucking museum, right? And they had these little kiosks that had questions, and you'd get to answer the question and then see what percentage of people answered what, right? One of them was, what is the job of the president of the United States? And this is supposed to be an educational museum, and it was in the presidential section. Right? And so the options were director of the economy, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and then a couple other ones, right? And so I go, oh, of course, yeah, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, enter. Do you know what percentage put commander-in-chief of the armed forces?
A small percent?
It was like 30.
Okay.
Director of the economy was more than 50%.
Huh. Can you imagine?
I was just
especially with some of the presidents we've had? Like, come on.
I was just like, holy shit. it's over. Oh my God. But yeah, so sorry for all the doomer posting there, but it's
of course it's exciting. I want.
Yeah, what's that old is the quote that is either, is it correctly or is it misattributed to Sun Tzu, where it's like, may you live in interesting times.
I think that was Albert Dumbledore.
Actually that was a Halo quote.
That's a quote from Halo. John Halo says that after the destruction of the Hogwarts ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the Jonathan Dumbledore, VZGrips.com. Look at the VZ320 texture. It's handsome. I have them on my revolver gun, and now it's available for the Kimber K6, a gun. I actually owned one of those for 2 or 3 days even.
Dang.
Yeah, I hated it. But yeah, VZGrips is a cool Florida company. They've been around for 20 years, since 2003. That's as long as some of you have been around. They got all kinds of cool stuff. Really good grips. They keep these grips. The job of them is to direct the national economy. All right.
Yep.
So if you guys want to have that power in your hand, go to VZGrips.com and use promotional code ThisWeek15. That's THISWEEK15. And I know you got that, really bad. You could have a really bad CZ75 or like one of these other pieces of equipment, and you want to make it less bad. I personally guarantee, you have my personal non-binding guarantee that you put VZGrips on your gun and it will shoot better than you can.
That's true.
Most of my guns shoot better than I can. There's a
but if you put VZGrips on them, it would be like before VZGrips, and then it's a lot of holes all over the place, and then after VZGrips, and it's just one hole in the bullseye.
It's just one, yeah. Oh wow, how many are in that hole? One. Gotta stop while you're ahead.
That's my favorite thing. Whenever I introduce somebody, for their first time to trap shooting. Mm-hmm. Like we usually set the house to straight away and have them shoot on the house. So, rather than the 16 yards, that's usually minimum, just like right up on the house. And you have the bird thrown straight away and explain to them how it works. And anytime somebody hits their first one ever, I'm like, here's what you need to do. never touch a shotgun again. As it stands right now, you're the most accomplished trap shooter of all time. You've never missed. From here, you can only get worse and more frustrated with yourself. Just quit. Never try this stupid game again.
I've never seen somebody just nail it on the first go.
When it's set to dead straight away, it's pretty easy.
Dead, yeah.
I'd say it's 50% of people on their first try will hit one dead straight away shooting on the house, because when you're there on the house, especially if you're using a choke that's tighter than modified, you can just shoot anywhere near it and hit it. So as long as you're not shooting, I guess, like over it, as long as you wait for it to come close to its peak, it's very hard to miss.
Yeah, no, Sam blew up her third clay, but we were at an actual like sport shooting range, and I was impressed with that because they were not easy.
Yeah,
like they were fast and rising and all that. But anyway, so this is cool. The murder rate has actually dropped. We did it, Reddit.
There we go.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, the murder rate has dropped in 2023, and we can sit here and pontificate as to why.
Because coronavirus ended.
No. That's ridiculous.
Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine and it ended coronavirus.
I don't want to listen. No, I do not want to hear you suggest this idiotic, inane, genteel theory that people no longer being locked in cages all the time somehow made them behave in an antisocial manner. That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Yes. And even in this article, it says the early 2023 data offer a glimmer of hope that the dramatic uptick in homicides shortly after the onset of the COVID pandemic, which is not related, is starting to abate. The effects could be both practical and political. The pandemic era uptick saw the reemergence of crime and, by extension, access to guns as a salient political issue in a way not seen since the height of the country's violent crime wave in the 1990s. But
I think the uptick was actually because Fisher Scientific wasn't shipping $99 contacts, and then as soon as they offered $99 contacts, look at this, news is coming out, it's dropping. But if they don't ship them, you know what's going to happen.
It's
if my order gets canceled, if everybody's order gets canceled, there's only one way the murder rate goes from there.
I mean, there is one sure way to reduce the murder rate.
Everybody gets free contacts.
Well, okay, 2 ways. Well, 3 ways, actually. The second way is to end the drug war, because that's...
Yeah, I mean,
we've talked about that before. People look to say, oh, my drugs. Well, the violent enforcement of drug prohibition drives violent crime and drives territory disputes between, local businesses.
The best one, okay, so this is a little bit of a sidebar. The best version of this is whenever you talk to some form of boomer who's got his beer and or scantily clad women faded t-shirt tucked into his jean shorts, right? Just as the inner cities and the gangs and all the use, that's the problem. They just have to solve that, and then all the problems are solved. And then he'd propose, like, okay, so how do you feel about some sort of scaling back of the drug war, and instead of arresting people for these things, you offer them, you go to prison or you go to rehab, because rehab ends up being cheaper than somebody being in and out of a revolving door prison, and the amount of money and time it costs to prosecute them if they get prosecuted, which is the trouble that cities have found themselves in now, right? It's become a self-feeding cycle. So you propose to this jean shorts wearer that, well, then why wouldn't you change something about the way drug laws are enforced? Because that is what drives gang activity, right? Gangs don't come together and have no contraband. They sell and deal in drugs, and they'll go, oh no, because pot's bad.
Yeah, no, because
it's a mind killer.
As we remember by that government-funded movie, if you allow people to smoke pot, your daughter may have a multiracial child.
That's true.
It's literally one of the primary concerns leading to marijuana prohibition, by the way. Look it up. But then there is my third option. We just sell Louisiana back to the French. I'm serious. and also, by getting rid of... And I'm not... Listen, I have been to Louisiana, but I don't have any particular distrust or disdain for the state. But if you get rid of Louisiana, then we actually have a strong correlation that more access to firearms results in less violent crime.
Right.
If we just, call up Trudeau or Putin or whoever is the president of France right now,
Angela Merkel, I think.
yeah, Merkel, just and be like, look, $50.
All yours. And you know what? We'll throw in all of the alligators for free.
You can have, don't tell the French. The gators in the pond are free. You can take them home. Yeah, you can have them.
They taste good whenever they mix it with chicken, and then they call it fried gator bites, and then it's only 5% gator. So they lied to you. It's just chicken.
Wait. Does that happen?
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
that can't have happened to me. That can't have happened.
Maybe there's some restaurants that have like actual gator bites, but the place I went to,
the places I've eaten gator bite, I could see the gators.
Well, there you go.
Because we're in Florida.
I just took a bite out of one. They're free.
Yeah, because you can take them.
He wasn't a fan of it.
He got upset. But yeah, the next one is interesting because everyone always tries to cite statistics, right, to prove whatever point they're wanting to prove. Well, there's some interesting research that's come out. Study finds Americans are reluctant to tell researchers that they own guns.
Huh. Apparently they needed researchers to figure that out.
Yeah, these are the findings of a study published in Social Psychiatry and Psychiatric Epidemiology by the New Jersey Gun Violence Research Center at Rutgers. It found estimates of how many Americans own guns could be off by as much as, what do you think, what percent?
25.
45%.
There you go.
And it identified several demographics of people who may be most uncomfortable sharing information about their firearms with researchers. Okay, so they found 3 major groups that are most likely to refuse to answer or lie. The first and largest group was unmarried women who are not white or black and live in cities.
Interesting.
The second group was married white men and married white women in urban areas. And then the third largest group was married white women who were evenly spread across rural, suburban, and urban areas. And the one thing that ties all those groups together in, not wanting to say whether they have a gun or not is not having children living at home.
Huh.
So, and that kind of makes sense when you scratch on it a little bit, when you gnaw on the nugget, because people who have kids, oftentimes, thank God, still have these little, neuron activators up here that are like, I have something that is very soft and squishy that I like very much, and perhaps I ought to protect it.
Right. Even
my sister, who hates guns, this is a family story, guys, that I haven't told you repeatedly, will freely and openly tell you that she is a gun owner. She leaves out the fact that it's a tourist judge, which, oh my God, I had nothing to do with that.
If you hit a home invader, he might be mad. If you hit him with one of those 410s and he notices it, he's not going to be happy with you.
I did ask her if she filed off the front sight.
To make it draw better?
No, I said it'll hurt less when he shoves it up your ass. And then I was like, I offered to give her a Glock because that's another bad gun.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's not a bad gun. It's just one of the guns of all time, right?
It is one of the guns of all time, truly.
Yeah, I was like, you can just have this one. And she was like, I don't need that. I've got my revolver. It's like, oh my God, I know what your revolver is. I know exactly what it is. But yeah. So I love this because now you get to throw this, progressive university funded research at all the research you see. It's like, oh, you think that's how many gun owners there are? Well, whoop.
Right.
You might be off by 45%. But yeah, no, I wouldn't want to tell any researcher anything, frankly.
The only time that I've ever been talked to by a researcher was when I was in school, and it was the Elect Bernie Sanders Club at the school. And they, I don't know how they got my number. That was the first weird part. And then the first thing I asked is how they got my number, and they didn't answer it. And then they said that Bernie Sanders believes in this, this, and this. And I asked if Bernie Sanders believes in machine guns. And then they stopped texting me. Like, I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to have a conversation, and I just asked, like, does Bernie Sanders believe in me having a machine gun?
When I was in high school, I used to go to the shopping mall, which is a thing for our younger viewers that used to exist. It was like going to Amazon in real life, except everything was much worse and much more expensive.
More expensive, and there was weird people there.
But I would intentionally walk past the little research center they had there, and I would walk past it several times in a row, because if you got picked by the busker or whatever the hell you call them, they would give you $5 for your opinion. And so I would go in and I would just click through the stupid test as fast as possible, and then I would come back a couple of days later. I remember one time I was like, they showed a preview for The Mummy and asked me a bunch of questions based on it, and I just basically clicked that I hated it.
Brendan Fraser's in that, right? I hate Brendan Fraser.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Next up, boys, we've got MAF Corporation. Make art with the product. The Mr. Pistol 5 kit. I'll tell you something that's a little secret. People don't know this. It's back in stock.
Not a lot of people know this. There's gonna be little ones too. They're gonna
be smaller ones too. But yeah, check it out there.
Little bitty.
They're available, ready to go, mounted and everything. And they've got Avtomet Kalashnikova Modern kits. That's right, made of Romania and Poland. Good prices.
Polish Romania.
In stock, headspaced, ready to go to your door. You got to check it out.
You could trapeze through the woods with them. I have it on good authority.
Trapeze. That's maf-arms.com, and use promotional code FRN. That's Foxtrot Romeo November. Just go there, get the best deals that you can possibly find on parts, kits, and components. So check them out. All right, next up, I'm gonna introduce this with a little story. The news headline is breaking. Florida streets are not ankle deep in blood after permitless carry became law.
I was promised they would be. I am so disappointed.
Right. So we do have that now, and it is fine. And the blood thing is normal.
Normal amount of blood street, like maybe toe high.
In Florida, it's a normal thing. It's because it gets hot and we get a little upset with each other.
They get cranky.
It's just whatever, right? But yeah, we've had permitless carry now for a few weeks. And guess what? No one knows the difference. Because people were carrying guns with or without a permit because it's Florida.
Right.
You kind of need to have a gun in case you're approached by a gator or a coyote or a coyote. So it happens. And also the panhandlers can get a little violent.
The meth zombies.
The zomboids. But yeah. Next up, this is a little quip for you guys. This is an interesting one about the NRA. So I remember when SAF welcomed NRA to intervene in its pistol brace lawsuit, saying, oh yeah, it'll be good for NRA members to get protection too. Why not? It was very sportsmanlike of SAF. The judge, though, didn't think much of NRA's efforts and basically told them to go pound sand. So they took their expensive lawyers and went and filed their own case in the same district. I wonder how well that will go for them. But yeah, no, the headlines are absolutely bone crushing. Yet another loss for the NRA and the Brewer law firm. Yeah, it just kind of talks about like all of their little the little exploits.
The NRA is like weirdly losing when it comes to gun law. I know there's been a couple that they've won that weren't like unimportant, but and then I know they like to try and take credit for Heller, but they had nothing to do with that.
No, they tried really hard to fuck it up.
Right. Like at the 11th hour, they wanted to attack themselves on and take the reins, which was like just stupid.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many millions of dollars they spent to like just on their little lawfare, which is not very good.
Right.
And I'm not here to say that. And look, NRA funded lawyers are responsible for actually far more, probably more than any other national organization, like just looking all the way back. But also, who cares?
Right.
You know, some of our substantial civil rights victories are from completely independent actions. You know, one of which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Not that it's a victory yet, but something more important to discuss right now. The grid. It could go down at any time.
No.
You need to have the new generator protects against extreme heat. Listen, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X could be the last thing that protects you and your family from the event. And it has more capacity for longer run times, more continuous power. They have the food. You need to have the food because what if something happens tomorrow?
What if somebody, I'm spitballing here, somebody took a 50 caliber rifle?
Yeah, and the A-pits? Yeah. They
took A-pits.
The A-pit, yeah. The 3 months. Wow, look at how happy she is. With 3 months of food, you can have it for $599. That's 3 months. You say, that's too long. I don't want to live that long if something happens. Well, give yourself some time, right? You got the 72-hour survival food kit, $29. It's less than...
Honestly, at the end of the world, 3 days is probably all you want to go, because past the point you're out of toilet paper and then running water is not a thing anymore. It's like, do I want to be alive? So I mean, you can make your machine guns, your homemade machine guns. You can have your fun, shoot through your whole ammo stash, and be like, well, I'm done. I'm just gonna save this game, and I'm never gonna pick it back up.
But for those 72 hours, you could have 6 meals a day. 6 meals a day, 4,800 total calories. The last 25 years, handpicked in the USA, no added MSG. Give them a call, 100% satisfaction guarantee. Use code FRN Foxtrot Romeo November. Guess what? You're going to get it for 10% off. 10% off of that already deal price. All right, go get it. Get it from 4patriots.com. Okay. All right. Thanks, 4Patriots, for the money. All right. Can you turn it back on, Steve? All right. All right. So this is one that, like, I've been struggling with how to talk about, right? Because everybody's not everybody, quite a few people are like all jazzed up about the framer receiver rule being thrown out,
Right.
and it's good that it happened, but it's also like it had already been so buck broken.
It had been rather extremely buck broken, and I don't want to assume the best of federal judges, because they almost always will disappoint you. But it almost felt like this dude was just intentionally busting the ATF's balls as much as he could, where he just like kept admitting every group that asked if they could be added to the injunction, just like to really rub salt in the ATF's wounds. But yeah, I guess the news here is that judge has, and interestingly, this is the same judge who denied injunction in the pistol brace case. And I think it was Mock v. Garland. He denied injunction of at the district level, except now again at the district level here with this framer receiver rule, he has now vacated the entire rule. So it's not as aggressive as I guess he could have done, because he could have taken a step. He could have gone a step further, I suppose, and say like, oh, the ATF doesn't have power to make determinations whatsoever. But what he's done here is it returns us to the status quo. So we go back to where we were before as far as things go. Now, I guess if you
Well,
read
so
between-
well, to kind of assess what happened, like I'm sure some of you remember right before this rule took effect, 80% receivers and jigs were like mega premium, and everyone was saying, "Oh, this is the last time," or whatever. And then, like, nothing really happened.
right, people just kept selling them, and then like ATF put out like 2 or 3 letters where they're like, basically just don't sell it with a jig, and then if it's a polymer 80 handgun, then it has to have
don't put the slide in it.
Right, like with the polymer 80 frames, they said that it has to have a little bit of extra blocking material to block the trigger housing. And then Polymer 80 redesigned their jigs, and then we're doing that. And then Polymer 80 got added to the injunction, so they're like, actually, we're not doing that. So like, except for a couple of weeks there for a couple of companies, it really didn't change anything, which is really weird because like just nobody obeyed it.
Yeah, like the AK 80% went away for like 3 weeks, and then they just showed up.
Pre-bent AK flats by the letter of the way things were written, there's no way they could have been okay.
Right.
Because all it took was drilling, and the ATF didn't want just drilling holes to be okay.
Right.
And then people just kept selling them anyway. And so, and of course, maybe it's because like very quickly in court, the ATF started losing, and maybe everybody saw the writing on the walls where they're like, the ATF's not going to enforce this until it's flushed out in the courts.
Right. So, but yeah, after a long tango in Texas, the district court has spoken. And for the moment, ATF can't just unilaterally rewrite the Gun Control Act. He did write that. And the issue is that this legal precedent is devastating to my lifelong dream of becoming an ATF bigwig and reinterpreting the Gun Control Act to only regulate Serbian firearms. I am crushed that I will never be able to have that, and they've taken this from me. But
yeah, so. I mean, well, this decision may only be limited to something that expands the scope of the Gun Control Act. Oh. What we need to do, again, we infiltrate the ATF deepest, and one of the two of us can become director or whatever. And maybe we can take turns being director. It'll be the first co-directorship.
No, what we'll do is it'll be like us, but it will be just 2 guys in a trench coat. So we'll be like a 12-foot tall trench coat
sitting there at the congressional hearing. We'll get confirmed, of course, because we're not controversial. We're good guys.
Yeah.
Certainly neither of us have ever had a controversial moment in front of Congress already that they'd bring up. That hasn't happened.
I'll be in the bottom of the trench coat.
and then somebody at the bottom, somebody there on the congressional panel will be like, I think I recognize the bottom of the trench coat. And it'd be like, no, there's the bottom of the trench coat. No, I'm just 12 foot tall.
That's just my torso.
But we get confirmed to the directorship, and we interpret the Gun Control Act to mean that firearm by its very definition really only applies to bad guns, and the worst of the bad guns is Yugoslavian, quote unquote, Yugoslavian AKs. So those are the ones you have to do background checks on. Those are the ones that are hard to transfer and all that. Everything else is fine though, because it's not a firearm, because it's a good gun.
Yeah, no, everything else, because it's not weapons. Those are good. Yeah, because we reinterpret weapon to mean something that's dangerous to the user. Weapons are double-edged swords, and we notice that normal AKs only hurt other people.
Yeah, they're only one-edged swords.
Yeah, so they're not weapons. They're just AKs.
Yep, just like katanas. Are katanas firearms? Nope. So AKs can't be firearms either.
Nope, it'll all be 100% logically consistent.
That's true.
But all right, last up, we've got, and this is something that is actually, it happened right after we were premiering the last episode, and everyone's like, when are you going to talk about Rahimi? When are you going to talk about Rahimi? When are you going to talk about Rahimi? Not realizing that these are pre-recorded. So
yep.
that was so frustrating. But and I'm sure there will be some other news thing that people in the live chat will be like, you forgot this. But the Supreme Court did agree to take up a new case, United States v. Rahimi, which is not a case that was brought by any gun rights groups. And is a doozy.
Oh my God! It's like a cactus wrapped inside of a prickly pear that was eaten by a porcupine. This case is stickly.
Yeah. So the defendant, who I think it's not controversial for me to say, this guy's a world-class asshole.
He's really a piece of shit.
He has not just in matters unrelated to this case, he has been charged with traditional Texas conduct that includes shooting into the air at a Whataburger drive-thru because his friend's card was declined. Shooting at people who were purchasing Percocets from him.
As one does.
Shooting cars in traffic.
Sometimes you just gotta. That's understandable, honestly.
But he was convicted for possessing firearms while subject to a domestic violence restraining order, and that's the case that's at bar here. The Fifth Circuit sided with him, holding that there was not sufficient historical basis to justify the wholesale loss of gun rights for a domestic violence restraining order. Because bear in mind that doesn't require any kind of conviction at all, and the level of proof
or whatever. Yeah,
the standard of proof,
relatively low,
very low. It's basically, it can be as low as like preponderance of the evidence, which is like coin toss.
Right. The analysis I had seen is that domestic violence restraining orders have been issued purely based off of the word of one person against the word of another.
Right.
Like there doesn't have to be doesn't have to be bruises. There doesn't have to be broken glass. There doesn't have to be a cop that showed up. It can just be like hey, I said this happened.
Right. And so that's not much legal protection for the defendant. So it's natural that, consistent with due process, you not lose an entire civil right over that.
Right. It's almost weird to me that Bruin was even allowed as a test here, because to me, it seems like this is just a due process question. Should you lose rights over something that, like, should you lose your right to vote over this?
Well, I guess they attempted to litigate it through the Second Amendment, and so that's how it was litigated.
Right.
But some people are concerned about the courts taking up Rahimi, fearing that the court will kind of like stem back Second Amendment cases because this defendant is such an asshole. And it is true, and we talked about before, that bad facts do result in bad law, but I don't think that's the top concern right now.
Right.
Rahimi falls into a lot of categories that the Supreme Court likes to see when it takes up a case. One, it would resolve a difference of opinion between the circuits, because there have been other circuits that have held in different directions. Two, it involves a case where the court's intervention wouldn't make much real difference, because this guy's going to jail.
He's still going to jail
for all of the other shit he did. And finally, the Attorney General asked for it. And oftentimes when the AG asks for it, they get it.
Right.
So I'd say let's watch this case with anticipation rather than with fear.
So if I had to theory craft, me, I know a lot about being a Supreme Court justice. So here's what I would do if I was a Supreme Court justice. Here's what I'd be thinking. They know that they've got a lot of Second Amendment cases coming to them that are either civil or, in the cases that they are criminal, it's not like bad criminal cases. Mm-hmm. It's not like the guy was a bad guy that killed people or shot at people while they were drug dealing or whatever. So I sort of suspect what I would I guess hope that they would do is, they take this case and they do rule about it on Second Amendment grounds, but they sort of do a similar thing to what they did in Heller, where there isn't a test established or articulated, and they really, really limit the scope of it down to like just this case and just things that are violative of due process in this regard, mm-hmm. and not that I wouldn't expect this to be similar to Bruin, where it's like a sweeping establishment of new things. And I know people are talking about how Kavanaugh and Alito are both kind of like law and order sort of fellows who believe in people getting their punishment, and people who are, at least in other cases, not necessarily the biggest fans of due process,
right? Which
is always amazing to see in a judge. But unless for some reason they have some pull on this, I wouldn't expect that. I saw some people were like doomer posting like, "Oh, this is the end of Bruin. They're going to roll back Bruin big time." I don't know why that would be the case.
Yeah. I think if anything, it's like, I think you're right. It'll probably be this ticket is good for this train on this platform at this time.
Yeah. They wouldn't like, I mean, I'm sure they're aware of the fact that there's a strategy being played here. Clarence Thomas has made that very obvious by what he did in Bruin. Mm-hmm. There's some sort of strategy going on his end, because I guess he sees a change that needs to happen. And maybe that's maybe that's the court's trying to, of course, probably aren't supposed to do that, but also the legislature is not supposed to deny us of our rights in the first place. So who gives a shit? The courts are riding a ship that they see is on its way to capsizing. And so I don't know that I'd fault them for that, at least not as far as the gun issue is concerned. But yeah, I have to believe that they're not going to use this as the vessel to clarify or expand Bruin, because like there's questions unanswered in Bruin that I don't think this case could answer. Like the question of what's the relevant period for looking at laws. I don't know that this case is the one that really clarifies that really well. Or I guess really hammering home what is arms, because I guess Bruin and Heller haven't done that enough, despite doing it pretty darn clearly. But having a case where, and I guess California's done it, Maryland's done it, Illinois has done it, and New York has done it. Pretty much every anti-gun state has done it at this point, where they're like, semi-automatic rifles aren't arms and magazines aren't arms because they're dangerous. And if the Supreme Court could clarify that one for us, that would help. But again, that's not really at issue with the Rahimi case.
Yeah, so it's pretty limited scope. So, but let's just see. If anything, they could just be like, look, that's not a conviction. Right. Moving on. Because back in the day, even, and this is important to this case, even people who were convicted of felonies, etc., they would get their guns back.
Yeah, when your time served is up, you were out.
And even before, if they posted a surety bond. Right. If they were, so there's a lot of factors here that are worth exploring and that don't have to go in the wrong direction, really. Speaking of going in the wrong direction, I'm just kidding. It's nice people. It's Patriot Patch Co. Go to patriotpatch.co and they've got patches and you can get a discount with Twig 10, TWIG 10. We're the Twig people. This is the Twig Patch Company, longtime supporter of the show. Join the Patch of the Month clubs. I haven't got this one yet. Oh no.
Right, to keep and bear eagle wings.
Yeah, the keep and bear eagle arm shall not be infringed.
They got the Tapka one, the AK.
Yeah,
the AK is missing. This AK is missing a couple of rivets for that trunnion, but I wouldn't worry.
No, that's it's a BFT 47.
Those rivets fell off.
Rivets. Yeah.
Those are optional rivets.
Yeah. No, I did say oh no to the tap code AK, but it is a cool patch, and when you get these in your mailbox, this one's on its way to me right now. It's a nice little endorphin rush. You never know what you're going to get. There's an example of some of the most recent ones. You can see the last one for 4th July is on my microphone. Go to patriotpatch.co, sign up, buy your patches. They got plenty of cool ones, and use promotional code TWIG10 so they know I sent you. All right. So that's it for today, folks. I'm sure some of you have noticed I've been investigating the YouTube Shorts market. And man, there's a lot of money in there. I have made 45 cents.
Dang, he's ready to retire. See you, losers.
But my hope is that with the shorts, because there's a lot of like bad information and stuff that comes out. So we've actually got a guy helping us that go through our long episodes and take out minute segments of us saying cool stuff and put up shorts on them. So if you see those, do a like on it. It's nice.
Very nice.
He also made me sit further back from the camera so that I look less stupid. You got any updates for the people?
I don't know if I have any updates.
You just sent me your outline.
Oh yeah, that's true. So I guess that's the update. So I sort of collected, like I'm a noticer of things. I notice things. I'm a nudicer. And so I've noticed a lot of the misconceptions, as well as, right, these were misconceptions that I either still have or at one point in time had about the legal system and the way these old court cases and lawyerisms go. And so we'd mentioned that the giant rat here is going to do the the giant rat, not I the giant rat, is going to do the video about essentially the way the federal court systems work as far as civil cases dealing with gun rights in particular, but and so I sort of made an outline of the misconceptions and sort of the way that, chronologically speaking, how you'd run into misconceptions or things that I've seen people get really confused on. So that video is still in process, but I guess like with all good things, it will take time and then hopefully be a useful resource to people so people can stop saying things like, why don't you just appeal it to the Supreme Court? Why don't you just
Or
argue? Why don't you
argue
just
Bruin.
argue a Bruin? Yeah, just argue
Yeah.
Bruin. Just argue Bruin, and then you'd win. Like it'd be great if that's how that worked. But
Yeah, it was like if it was like our favorite type of video game, a PRRPG, Puerto Rican role playing game,
yeah.
where you just he used Bruin and it's like an instant death.
And then the anti-gun and Gabby Giffords just like withers into a skeleton and falls down. Like no,
You get a lot of XP. But yeah, all right, guys, you can look forward to that stuff. And as always, we will see you next time.
Bye bye.